What's up, everybody? John Eric Poli here with my MMA news, and today's guest will be fighting Trevin Giles at UFC San Antonio on March 25th. Pleased today to be joined by Preston Parsons. Preston, nice to see you, man. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate the time.
It's a pleasure to be here. Again, it's just I love doing news. It's another little dream come true to finally be able to do stuff like this, and for people interested in my story, or to see people interested in my story.
And like you said, right, I think you said the words dream come true in that. I'm sure the big dream, right, happened in your last fight. I want to back up to that one. You got your first UFC win in your last fight. What was that moment like? I'm sure it's a very special moment in your career, something you've been looking forward to for quite some time now that it all kind of has come here, as it all sunk in.
Words can't describe it. I was on top of the world. I felt accomplished. Not too accomplished. I know it's just the tip or just getting started. I want to get a number next to my name. Ultimately, my goal is to be the UFC welterweight champion. But it's hard to describe the feeling. Grateful is the main word I could describe. Grateful for my friends, my family, my coaches, the people around me that support me, people like you that enjoy watching me and that want to talk to me and that want to hear my story. And grateful is probably the best word for it. But the emotions were very high. It was, again, surreal being able to talk to DC after getting a win, being able to do the backstage press conference, and just the whole thing was surreal to me, and it was amazing.
So now your first fight in the UFC, right? It was short notice, and that's so hard to do. Then you get your first training camp, like full on training camp for your last fight. You get your first win. You mentioned everything that transpired post win, getting interviewed in the octagon, doing the post fight interviews, all the great stuff that goes into all that type of stuff. Now here you are coming to your third fight. Do you feel more settled in now that you've kind of had the two different fight experiences in the UFC? That things kind of you're not as hectic on fight week, so to speak.
Absolutely. Again, I was younger. I made my pro debut when I was 19 years old, so I'm gonna be 28 this year. So I've definitely matured as a fighter, as a man, and um, I definitely feel like I've grown substantially since my last fight. I've been working a lot with the coaches at Grace Baja, Jacksonville, Professor Roberto, and Corey Taylor. Got greatest training partners around, and they're also starting to find success for themselves as well. Number one training partner, Kuba Kashuba, he just signed to PFL, and I have Trey Waters. He had an opportunity on the Contender Series. My friend Steve Kozlow, another all Jacksonville natives, and Steve Kozlow fought in the UFC on a short notice against Cameron Simon, who just last weekend. So I feel like as a whole, my whole team and my whole surroundings are growing, and we're definitely in a better spot than we were just 2 years ago.
All right, man, let's get into some fight specifics now. So I opened up, right, saying that the fight UFC San Antonio for about, let's see here now, when's COVID now? 3 years now. We've kind of been in this world of pretty much whenever I do one of these interviews, I'm saying UFC Vegas, throw the number out, whatever it is. I think we're up to about 71 fights there in the Apex now. This fight, obviously, live crowd, different location. Just how excited are you to fight in front of a live crowd now for a change in the UFC as opposed to the Apex that you made your first two fights in?
Well, I will say that I like the Apex. At first I didn't think I would, but it grew on me a lot, and I got more familiar with it. I like the Fighter Hotel. I like meeting all the people down there. But I will say, all my amateur fights, all my regional pro fights, the crowd hypes me up. I think it makes me a little more nervous knowing my friends and family are there. I'm out there fighting in my underwear in front of my mom, my dad, and everybody else. So the little bit of nerves make me a little sharper, a little faster, a little more aggressive, and it gives me that little extra edge whenever I need it. So one of my original wrestling coaches always told me a little bit of nerves is good. Obviously, too much nerves can be crippling. So a little bit of nerves makes me fight a little bit harder. And when I visualized walking out, and for the past 10 years, when I visualized walking out for a UFC fight, I visualized crowd, I visualized all the people being there, and it'll give me goosebumps. So I'm looking forward to fighting in front of a crowd for my first time for the biggest show for the UFC, for the NFL of MMA.
Yeah, and that fight coming up here just a couple days. Let's now though talk about before we even get to fight night. Training camp still going on right now. I know you're putting the final touches on it. Just how's your camp been so far?
It's been great. Again, I've been working a lot with my team and my coaches at Gracie Baja Jacksonville, Professor Roberto and Corey Taylor. My team again. We have great guys there as well. My partner Corpo, my striking coach, my Muay Thai coach. I have a lot of support at the gym. I have great training partners: Kuba Kashuba, Trey Waters. The list goes on and on. Josh Lee, TK. I have a lot of support from my sponsors: Grappler Mag, Grapple Gorilla, Beaches Go Green, and I'm developing a good team at my gym, Elevate MMA, which we opened in 2020 during COVID, and since then we've strived, we've grown to get into the UFC, enhance that as well.
And with owning the gym too, right? You just mentioned there, right? You have to coach. You have obviously, when you're the boss, you're running the business there. What's that like? It's like I mean, so many of the fans are so used to tuning in, listening to what you guys have to say about the punches and the kicks and everything that goes into a fight. But now here being on the business side of things, what's that kind of been like? Experiencing, testing the waters of owning a gym and getting people to come in and coaching different people and everything that goes into that.
It's definitely overwhelming at times. I have to coach most of the classes. I actually have a kids class to coach in about 45 minutes. So coaching all the classes and um, stuff like that, it definitely makes it a little bit harder for me to focus on myself. But my partner Corey, he handles most of the business side for me, and he's great. Without him, the gym wouldn't be there. I have plenty of good support at the gym. I have a lot of good coaches there that help me out teaching the classes. My kids class coach, Mikey, he helps me out a lot. He's also the owner of Grapple Gorilla. My teammate TK, owner of Grappler Mag, he helps me out a lot with the classes. Ryan Jander. I have a lot of help at the gym as well. That gives me time to focus on myself and to focus on training. But with that being said, it is a hurdle to overcome to run a business, teach the classes, and at the same time focus on myself, because you've heard this before. It's a cliche thing to say, but this is a selfish sport. I have to focus on myself. I have to focus on my recovery, my rest. I don't go off of everybody else's schedule. I go off of my schedule. I'm when it's time for me to train, it's time for me to train. So that definitely is a hurdle I've had to overcome, and I'm slowly getting better and better at it. I will say in the past I've struggled managing my time management, but I'm getting a lot better at that.
All right, so I want to ask you a coaching question now because it's funny for anybody that's ever coached anything, I'm sure you're gonna be able to relate to this, right? Completely different than being the athlete when you're the coach. Well, completely different ballgame. You're the person giving the instructions. You're the person that the athlete has to go to talk to about certain things. You're the person keeping everybody calm, cool, collected. Like I said, completely different than when you're the athlete. What's it been like for you adjusting to that role too, as being a coach as opposed to being the one that's being coached?
I've always kind of been a coaching figure. Even at the gym I started at, I have great coaches in and out of there, but I was always in a position where I was the one that was there to run the classes. So I've been coaching almost as long as I've been fighting. Even when I did karate, I was coaching the classes and I would help out. And in a way, I think it's a good thing because my mind is constantly on fighting. I'm constantly thinking about jujitsu, Muay Thai, wrestling, boxing. I'm constantly whatever my coaches show me during the day, I'll show that night to the students. So my mind's going back to that same thing over and over again. So my mind's constantly on fighting to the point where sometimes I get home, I don't even want to hear anything about fighting. I don't want to watch fights. I just want to relax, play video games, even though I haven't had time for that in years now. But going fishing, anything that would get my mind away from fighting, I enjoy sometimes just because, again, Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. until 9 p.m., I'm fight mode, thinking about fighting, coaching fighting, preparing for fights, preparing other fighters for fights, coaching fighters all the way to kids to people that hobbyists. But again, I think it's a good thing at times because, again, my mind's always on fighting. And if my coaches were to show me something during the day, during my practice, I can teach that again that night. And it makes me think about it and it makes me remember it and rep it out even more. And I enjoy working with my students as well. So I'll jump in and I'll rep it out with them as well. I have a lot of good amateurs at my team. Uh, One to specifically shout out, Owen Binding. He's a good guy. He's a very good training partner as well. He's got a bright future ahead of him. Walter Zalea, when they make their pro debuts, they're going to be something special.
So you mentioned there, right? Fighting's always on your mind. Let's talk about your fight now here just a little bit, getting into the real specifics of it. Tell us about your opponent here. Just what have you seen out of him, and how do you see this fight playing out in your eyes?
I've watched a lot of film on him. I've watched, he's fought at 205, he's fought at 185, he's fought two times at 170. I think he's 1 or 2 inches taller than I am, maybe 2 or 3 inches longer in reach. I definitely see some holes that I can take advantage of. I think stylistically I match up well for him. I definitely see some openings that I can use for my striking, and I definitely see some ways I can get him on my takedowns and get him to the ground and cut him up with elbows, punches, and eventually submit him or catch him with some short strikes on the feet and get out of there with a KO. Because everybody keeps asking me if I prefer KO or submissions, and obviously the fans love knockouts. I mean, when I watch UFC fights, I like to see a knockout. I had a couple TKOs as an amateur, but as a pro, I've yet to have a knockout. So that's definitely something I want to give the fans.
I say, is that kind of almost the goal coming into this one that you want to secure your first knockout as a pro?
I want to secure a win. Yes, a knockout would be a cherry on top, but I definitely am I'm planning on to pressure this guy, get right in his face, get in his face, make it a fight, make it dirty. I'm tough. I've never been knocked out before. I mean, I've been TKO'd, but I've never been, even in practice. I know I have a tough chin. Um, so I plan on making it a dirty fight, and we'll see if he can keep up with me. But all respect to Giles, he's a great opponent and he's very experienced. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to fight a guy that's as seasoned as him. He's had 10 fights in the UFC. I've had two, so I think it's going to look good on my resume to fight this guy.
All right, so I do want to ask more about goals here. First of which being, I know, right? We said step one just is to go out here, get the win. But the fact that you are fighting in March kind of sets you up. You probably get a few fights in this year. What's kind of the layout here for 2023? What are some of the goals that you want to accomplish? And what's the perfect scenario look like for you here in 2023?
So you broke up a little bit, but the perfect scenario for me is to walk out of this fight unscathed, not with a broken hand like my last two fights, and fight again twice this year, get two more wins under my belt, and then next year fight, be active, and get a number next to my name. I want to see Kamaru Usman take that belt back against Edwards this weekend or next weekend, whenever that fight is, because every time I've thought about UFC for the last 2 or 3 years, it's been for the medals. So it's been proven, and that's been in my mind for a long time now. So I want to see him win that belt back, and then I want to go take it from him. And however, I can get that number next to my name.
Oops, sorry there. You cut out for us a little bit there. I did get the whole answer though. Did it end? Were you talking about taking the belt off of Usman?
Yes, I would like to see Usman beat Edwards because, again, yes, I've been visualizing fighting for the UFC title for a long time now. Obviously, if you're in this sport, you need to be in it all the way because if not, that's how you can get hurt. That's how you lose your fights. So I'm in it all the way. My goal has been to be the UFC welterweight champion for a long time, and then maybe really, really, really watch my diet, cut back down to 55, and maybe be the 55 champ as well. So I'm in it for the long run. I'm in it for the belt. I'm in it to be the best. Um, I know it gets talked about a lot, and I know I have a long way to go to even be mentioned next to these guys. But the John Jones, the GSPs, I want to be one of those guys.
Well, man, the journey's in full swing now that you're here. You're in the UFC. It's been great talking with you here today. Just one other question for you, though, before we wrap things up today. I did want to just get your thoughts about last weekend's card, UFC 285. A lot of action, a lot of great fights from the top all the way down. Just your thoughts on the card as a whole and some of the fights that you enjoyed seeing. I know the fans are buzzing about the main event with John Jones and, of course, the co-main event with Alexa Grasso getting the big upset there. Just your thoughts on the event.
I was very confident that Shevchenko was going to retain the belt, and it looked like she was a little more hesitant than she should have been. It was cool to see the underdog come out there and win because I watched all the embeddeds. I watched everything to do with that fight. I took Saturday off and I watched all the embeddeds and I watched the ceremonial weigh-ins. I watched the pre-fight show. I watched everything and just watching the demeanor of Grasso and she didn't seem super confident, but she went out there and she performed. And it was great to see an underdog again win the belt. As far as the John Jones fight, I'm a huge John Jones fan. I think he's one of the greatest aside all his issues and everything else and his time away from the UFC. But I always considered him one of the greatest. So I wanted him to win that fight. And my thoughts on the fight, I wanted to see it go a little bit longer. I wish it would have fought a little bit more, well, not long, would have got out of that choke so we could see a little bit more of John Jones than what we did. But I'm sure that he'll fight again. But all that aside, I thought it was a great card. It was cool to see him fight. He went out there and did exactly what I thought he was going to do. It's wrestle the guy down and submit him. The John Jones fight was the big one, obviously, and I'm happy that he got the victory.
All right, man. Appreciate all the time. Last thing before you head out today, social media, so people know where to follow you at. You have any management, sponsorship things that you got to plug, anything like that? Floor is yours. Take it away.
Yep, Elevate MMA, my gym here in Jacksonville Beach, Florida. Shout out to everybody that comes in and trains, my training partners, Kuchuba, everybody, Gracie Maxwell, Professor Corey Taylor, Grappler Night, Grappler, just Green, Sliders here in Safe Harbor, Mayport. I plan on one day opening up another Parsons Seafood out in Mayport. And again, just all the people that support me. My Instagram, Parsons MMA. And I appreciate I try much as I probably should be in the position that I am, but I'm working on that as well. I'm busy with the gym, busy training, but give me a follow. If you want to reach out to me, I will respond as soon as I can.